Well, I wish I deserved such a medal. It's such a great honor.
Yeah, it's really very heavy.
Yeah.
Really heavy.
On the 1st of July 2021, this photographic arts museum, named after Gao Fan, has opened in Zhejiang. One of its holdings is entitled The History of Chinese Photography, 48 volumes of which are archives of my parents, Isabel and David Crook. I'm Michael Crook, son of Isabel Crook. In November 1947, my mother came to China and arrived in the village of 10 Mile Inn, in the liberated areas. This year, a turbulent reform was taking place in China's extensive rural liberated areas. My mother was working on a PhD in anthropology at the London School of Economics and Political Science at the time. When she heard this news from China, she abandoned her comfortable life there and boarded a boat bound for China. At that time, my mother could never have guessed she would spend the rest of her life in China.
Interesting. The east gate of the village?
I wanted to do anthropology, but we thought that this land reform was the beginning of changing society, not just overthrowing the enemy. So we thought it was very important to study it and write about it.
This year, my parents entered the village of 10 Mile Inn, in the liberated areas of Jinjiluyu. 10 Mile Inn was a remote mountain village at the foot of the Taihang Mountains, now under the jurisdiction of the city of Wu'an in Hebei Province. My mother gave a description of 10 Mile Inn at the time. We arrived by mule cart, passing through the picturesque south gate. In bold white letters above the graceful arch was a line from a popular folk song set to the words, Mao Zedong is the great savior of the Chinese people.
哎，李维新，你好啊！我们
要到十里店去采访。
好的，我会积极配合，打好相告。
We went to the house where my parents lived while in 10 Mile Inn. Here my parents lived and ate with the villagers. During the day they would visit and interview villagers house by house and take pictures. In the evening, by lamplight, they would record in writing or by typewriter what they had learned. They actually stayed for 8 months, took over 700 pictures and wrote up their findings in 2 books. 10 Mile Inn Revolution in a Chinese Village and 10 Mile Inn Mass Movement in a Chinese Village, telling the world the truth about the rural liberated areas in North China at the time. When they arrived in the village of 10 Mile Inn, they lived in the home of Wang Jiaxiang. Some folks proposed that they should get special food cooked just for them, but they firmly declined. They insisted on having the same fare as the villagers, and they would bring their food out into the street and chat with the villagers as they ate. So in this way, the villagers no longer regarded them as foreigners out of nowhere.
挂江了，俺姥姥了，这边住在这个端午上中，这边在个后堂，克劳克夫妇和玉手白就住到这边的，玉手白就住到这个后堂。
I remember when they showed Bai Maoyu, she cried and said, "That's just like my life." But I realized afterwards there were many ways of suffering and not just poverty.
In this reform, women were given land, the right to participate in local politics and social affairs, and the freedom of marriage. In this picture, women were spinning while attending a land reform meeting. During the 8 months my parents spent in the village of 10 Mile Inn, they recorded with academic rigor of anthropologists this great reform in China's countryside, which gave land to the tiller. Eight months later, my parents left 10 Mile Inn by the only narrow-gauge railway in the revolutionary bases of CPC. But they did not go on to take a plane bound for Canada. Instead, they went to live in a more remote village, Nanhaishan, in Hebei Province. In July 1948, my parents received a surprise and special invitation. So it was that my parents helped set up the Central Foreign Affairs School, predecessor of the Beijing Foreign Studies University.
No, we weren't participants. We didn't join the revolution until we were asked to teach in the school, and we went to the school, and then we were paid by the school in millet.
On November 21st, 1950, my mother wrote to her doctoral dissertation supervisor at the London School of Economics and Political Science, Professor Raymond Foote.
Now we are more and more directly absorbed.
This year, my mother is 106 years old and continues to live a simple life on the campus of the Beijing Foreign Studies University. On the morning of September 29, 2019, my mother, Isabel Crook, was awarded the Friendship Medal by President Xi Jinping.
They are the product of over hundreds interviews we made at the home of Isabel Crook between the periods of October 2011 and May 2013, and more than 10 boxes of materials recovered from her home. These are an important part of the visual archive of Chinese Revolution.